So I was thinking this morning about what I'd like to talk to you about, and I'm teaching a kind of summer school right now, and one of the conversations that we have is the conversation about how our different perceptions can enrich our appreciation for something. Now, we're doing that primarily in the context of talking about reading. And the example that I give is that one of my favorite authors is an author named John Green. John Green wrote a book called The Fault in Our Stars, and in The Fault in Our Stars, a very brief, maybe, not the strongest kind of explanation of what that book is would be that it's about two terminally ill kids who fall in love with each other. And so people often, it sounds like a downer of a book, and in some ways it's a very sad book, but it's also a very hopeful book. But I start to talk about how that book had a very special resonance with me, because when I started reading that, it was around the time that I found out that my sister was diagnosed with cancer. Now, my sister has been fighting cancer for the last 9 years. And, recently we've had a very, very good report we're waiting to get more, information about. But I've come to understand how her cancer sort of defines her and has defined her for the last 9 years. Like, many people, when they think of her as the woman with cancer. I work in the same school as her. People come up to me and they ask how she's doing because they care about her. But every thought related to her sort of is related to that cancer. And that's both a kind thing, but it's also in some ways an unkind thing, because it sort of defines her by this worst thing in her life. And so I talk about how that's my perception of that shaded my reading of that book differently than it would for other people. And then I go on to talk about how I discovered that John Green at one point held the position of being a chaplain in a children's hospital, and how a lot of that job is about bringing comfort to kids that are terminally ill, and bringing comfort to parents of kids who are terminally ill, and those parents are watching their kids maybe get worse, and they're contemplating the possibility and the thought of losing their children, and how all of that is so tragic. What a difficult and painful job, but what a job that offers so much hope to other people. And how I read in an interview that John Green, because of his experiences there and his relationship with a young girl named Esther Earl, really wanted to write a book that helped people to know that kids that have cancer, what they want people to see them as more than anything is just kids. They want to be defined as more than just their disease, if that makes sense, right? They just want to be as normal as possible. And how my understanding of that can also flavor my reading of The Fault in Our Stars. How the more people I talk to and the more I hear what The Fault in Our Stars meant to them and how they read it and what they got out of it, the richer my understanding of that work is, because I'm seeing it from all these different perspectives now. It's like watching the sunset from different sides of the earth, and it's just this beautiful image and idea. And I think that applies to music too. This morning I was listening to a podcast it's called In Defense of Ska, and it's hosted by Aaron Carnes, who wrote the book In Defense of Ska, and one of the great guys in the ska scene, and the lead singer of Omnigon as well. And they were interviewing Tara Hahn from Half Past Two and her aunt, who got her into ska. And I just remember thinking, what a beautiful thing that they're looking at ska from the perspective of someone who's in a ska band, and they're also interviewing the person who got her into ska. And like, her perception of ska was flavored by her aunt's perception of ska. And that had this impact, and just the way these things all move together, right? Like, we love ska more because of the people that we interact with that love ska. There's this quote in the beginning of the book Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller where he says, "I used to not like jazz music because it seemed to like never end. There was no resolution. But one day I saw this guy playing saxophone in the street in Portland. I think it was in Portland. And he played for like several minutes straight without opening his eyes. And then I love jazz music, because sometimes we need to see someone love something before we can understand why people love it." And so I think not only do we need to see people love literature and ska music and all the things that I love and want all of you to love, but because it helps us to love it, but it also helps us to understand it in a different way, to get this richer, deeper understanding of this thing that we love. So I hope that maybe my sharing the books that I love and the music that I love can help some of you to find a way to love those things as well, if you don't already. Have a great day.